Welcome to the Celebrating Women podcast, co-hosted by Mandee Montana and Ashley Fisher, a podcast that celebrates women, their issues, their thoughts, their lives, conversations that celebrate their gifts, their talents, their courage. It's the Celebrating Women podcast. Presented by Hand & Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler, Texas. Hey there, it's Mandee Montana. Are you taking great care of your skin? You know, I use great products, I take my vitamins, and I drink plenty of water. But I could be better about applying sunscreen daily and making sure my skin is protected against premature aging. What about you? I've got great news, though. I do have a solution. It's called the Diamond Glow Treatment at Hand & Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler. I love it. It exfoliates and hydrates your skin at the same time. I know my skin feels so soft and silky after. You have got to try it. If you've never had a facial before, they do offer different options at Hand & Stone, like hydrating and brightening. If you're struggling, though, with dark spots, hyperpigmentation, sun damage, sallow skin, enlarged pores, maybe oily skin, this is the treatment for you. If you want your skin to glow and look and feel amazing, you've got to try the Diamond Glow. Located in Cumberland Shopping Center, schedule your appointment today. Visit handandstonetyler.com. That's handandstonetyler.com.
Welcome back to the Celebrating Women podcast. I'm Ashley Fisher.
I'm Mandee Montana, and we have a special guest today.
I'm Becky Cunio. I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
We're so excited to have you here.
So Becky and I know each other just a little bit. We met this summer because a friend of mine nominated me to be a Woman of Hope with the Organization for the Silent. And correct me if I'm wrong, are you the Executive Director?
Yes, I am. I should have said that, I guess.
That's okay.
Yeah.
No. That's perfect. So I have known about this organization for a while. I've previously attended a Hope Gala, and I feel like I'm always learning more about it. Like, it's not something that I feel like I'm an authority on at all. I certainly feel passionately about the cause and I want to help as a woman of hope. But part of the reason I didn't want to do this podcast episode just with Ashley and I is I wanted to have someone to speak to the specifics. What is For the Silent? What is like the big picture of what you guys do?
So I'm happy to kind of go into that. For the Silent, we serve an essential mission, and we're really unique because we are the only nonprofit in this community, in this area, that specifically addresses the issue of commercial sexual exploitation of children. So we work on the issue of child sex trafficking and exploitation, and we provide services to victims and survivors. But beyond that, which that really is the most important aspect of our work, we do a lot of community education and training with general community members, but also with professionals too. Having been in this field myself for many years, it just seems like, you know, nobody knows enough because it's ever changing and the world is ever changing. The internet completely changed things with regard to traffickers and how they recruit and look for
And their access
the
to
youth
people
that they prey upon. So, you know, I always say that the cell phone or the internet is the new white van of sorts. I mean, just in the 80s, that was kind of like...
don't take candy from a stranger in a white unmarked van kind of. Yeah.
So, I mean, most youth now have access to devices, and that really creates a vulnerability for any and every child, every young person. It was interesting because I did a training with Kevin Fight. He's a board member, but he is a close friend I've worked with for many years, and he works with Tyler Police Department. So we presented to personnel and teachers at White House ISD, and I said, just to kind of demonstrate the risk that exists for everybody's kids, if you have any young people in your life, when you go home tonight, ask them, have you been approached today? I mean, because it happens daily. Have you been approached today or at any point this week online by someone who you don't know in person? And I didn't expect anybody was going to, in that moment, do it, but one of the teachers actually messaged her teenage daughter, and she said, yes. I mean, it happens every single day, and someone just messaged me right before you did, and she came up to us after the training ended, and she was like, I'm shocked, and now I've got to go figure out, you know, who she's talking to. But truly the most important advice I give to everybody is around the issue of just take time to get to know youth and young people. see them as individuals, not as children or teenagers or a responsibility or a burden, but really spend time with them and help them grow into thriving adults, because being a teenager is very hard, and they see us as the authority on everything. We're not. But
so true.
but
that's their perspective.
Yeah. So we really need to take the time to be in relationship with children and youth and help them understand how to navigate the world. And if there are topics that they aren't comfortable speaking with you about, help them identify the trusted adults in their lives that they can go to when they are experiencing pressures or when things are hard, or if they need some guidance on how to respond in a difficult situation.
So I think for a lot of listeners across all ages, the thought that sex trafficking could be happening in Tyler, Texas is like, oh no, that's what happens across the way. That happens not here. But can you kind of give us some perspective and some reality? What does that look like in our area so that we're aware?
Yeah, so it absolutely happens here. It does look different, I think, than most imagine. So human smuggling and human trafficking are two different crimes. Human smuggling, I think, is typically kind of the visual that comes to mind when someone's thinking of trafficking as an issue. Individual can be trafficked from the safety of their home and never having left their bedroom by way of a cell phone or an internet connection. Human trafficking is a crime against a person, and essentially there are two different forms of trafficking: labor trafficking and sex trafficking. So For the Silent specifically works on the issue of domestic minor sex trafficking, so child sex trafficking as it's occurring right here in our communities. And there are 30 plus forms of trafficking in terms of relationally what those situations look like. But as a forensic interviewer, the way I most frequently observed trafficking occurring was within and inside of families. And I know that sounds terrible to say that, but
it's an awareness we need to have and something we need to talk about.
It's true. Congressman Moran had a screening of the movie Sound of Freedom, and I know, there's a lot of opinions and controversy around the movie, but I love that the movie generated so much conversation and discussion. To me, that's really, that really is what's most important. But I mentioned kind of the familial aspect of trafficking, and someone came up to me who was in the audience after the movie, and she said, I was really surprised to hear you say that, but I'm so glad that you did, because that's my story.
Wow.
What does that look like specifically?
Sex trafficking, commercial sex trafficking, involves turning an individual into a commodity, putting them in the marketplace. I'm trying to be politically correct because I know that this is shocking to talk about, but it's selling a person's body for the benefit of another individual. So minors, legally, they cannot consent to any sexual activity. So there are elements of force, fraud, or coercion.
You said it can happen from somebody who's never left their bedroom, the safety of their bedroom, but it could, in that case, we're talking more photographs and those being shared and that kind of thing.
There's kind of a new emerging trend that we're seeing just from a criminal investigation standpoint, where young people are being, it's referred to as sextortion, but they're being extorted once an unknown person on the other side of the device has secured videos, photos, explicit content from the victim. And they were able to do that by building trust, connection, a relationship, pretending to be someone that they were not. And then once they had that very personal information, they leverage that and say, I'm not the teenage girl that you thought you were talking to who's close to your age. I'm actually a grown adult. And we're seeing this happen out of the country of Nigeria, which makes it really complicated in terms of putting a quick stop to it. But the FBI and Homeland Security are teaming up to work those cases. But it's a major thing that's happening in the United States that's affecting young people. There is a really tragic story with a young 19-year-old male. He was an athlete. He was playing football, I think, in Georgia. And within a 12-hour period of time, he had engaged in a relationship online, I think it was through Instagram, with someone who was posing as a 19-year-old female. He ended up taking his life because he was so ashamed to tell his parents or ask for help. But the individuals were demanding money, send me $2,000. So Kevin Veit kind of went over that information in the training, and he said that was in another state, but he said, I had a close personal friend of mine call me whose son is at Texas Tech, and he was in the exact same situation, and he wanted to know, what do I do? And Kevin said, well, I instructed him, immediately cut off connection and don't send money.
So lest anyone think or stop listening at this point because they think, oh, well, my kid knows well enough to never send a picture. I feel like it might be important to talk about that coercion piece again for those who think, oh, well, my kid would never. They know better, but coercion is very powerful. We've succumbed to it ourselves as adults, and we know better.
There's no real profile for who these people are. They can be anybody and everybody, but they see an opportunity to capitalize and use people as commodities. So the way that looks online, a trafficker, so think kind of like a broker, will be scouring social media profiles. And it's really very important as adults, again, and the only way you're going to know this information is if your child trusts you or whoever the children are, the youth in your life. The only way you're going to know this is if they have a trusted relationship with you to share this information. Or I guess you can take their device and look for yourself. But you need to know what apps they're on, because any app that has a chat feature, there's an inherent danger there. So a trafficker will be scouring social media profiles, and they're looking for some indication or representation of a vulnerability in a young person's life. And it doesn't have to be anything major. It can be something as simple as posting that, I hate my parents. I hate school. That's an opportunity that's presented itself. Right. So traffickers, it's almost like a bait and switch. They will send a mass number of messages out to all these different profiles or individuals that they're targeting, and they're just waiting for the response. So they may send out 100 messages and maybe 5 come back. And when the 5 come back, that's when the grooming begins. Trafficking is not something that's typically done by force. Although I say that it's usually not the way that starts. Almost never is it the way that starts, but it is always the way that it is maintained and ends is by force. It does always start through coercion and fraud, typically. All a trafficker needs is an end. If you've spent a lifetime, you've lived 16 years and no one's ever told you that you're beautiful, and someone's sending you a message and they look like a really good person, why are they talking to me? And they just told me I'm beautiful. Those are real stories that we hear from girls who've entered the life and who found themselves in these situations. Is he told me I was beautiful. That's where the relationship building begins. Our brains aren't fully developed until we're 25. Young people don't have the ability truly to be able to understand into the future the consequences of behavior. They also are hardwired at those early stages in life to seek out connection, to want to go out into the world and to explore. And if a child has been abused or neglected, or if they don't have strong parental relationships, or there's gaps that exist in their life, they will find that connection and attachment and nurture and love and care. They will find it. It usually doesn't end well, and it may not be a trafficking situation, but generally the issue of children thinking they can send images and videos and that they're going to be confined to the person that they're sending them to. I mean, I really try to always share that message with kids, young people, teenagers, that you have no control over what happens once an image leaves your
really
phone.
Even when you take it.
Really, once it's
on your phone, because your phone can be hacked.
Right.
I mean, all of us adults and children. Like really, if you choose to do that as a consenting adult, that's, whatever, but like it could be accessed by someone other than you. Everything's on the cloud, right?
Yeah. If any adult finds themselves in a situation where they've discovered something like that with their child, or they've learned that their child has, sent images or videos and now, they're out there in the world, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is a really exceptional organization. A lot of us probably think of them as, the Amber Alert organization. They also do a lot of really great work around child sexual abuse material and images. So they have a website, takeitdown.org. If you don't want to contact the police or the authorities, you can log on to that website and you can actually just reach out directly to them, and they have tools and resources that we just as private citizens don't have, and they can assist in trying to remove some of those images if they've made their way to the internet.
That's wonderful. Man, that's
but
great.
there's no way to do that with certainty across the board, but they do the best that they can.
Yeah,
that's amazing. So in our community, I feel like you're doing part of your work now because you're educating at least the two of us and then whoever chooses to listen. In what other ways can people engage? Like if they want to know more, if they're like, wow, this is really resonating. I need tools and resources to talk to my children. I don't know how to start this conversation. Aside from listening to you today, how else could they seek to be educated?
So it's never too late to start. It's hard to have these conversations, and it can be a little awkward, especially if you're not used to engaging your child in that way. But I would say just start by letting them talk. Kids are so used to us doing all of the talking and not exploring their inner world or, allowing conversation around their feelings and kind of their experiences throughout a day. Just start there.
Yeah.
My niece, for example, I would ask her years back, how was school today? And she would say it was good. Well, I want to know more than that. I genuinely want to know, like, how was school? Tell me about your day. Tell me about, I wanted to hear that. And initially that was not something she was in practice of knowing how to do. So encourage your kids to open up and talk about their feelings and just listen. Allow them to talk and present with no judgment. Don't offer your advice and your feedback and just be a neutral individual who really genuinely wants to know the inner world of the child that you're raising. Eventually you do want to approach the hard conversation of teaching young people what healthy relationships look like.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to dive headfirst into a sexual conversation, but teach them what it means to be in healthy relationships with others, not just individuals of romantically, but how to be a good friend. What does that look like? Yeah. How do people show care and concern, and how do they show up in your life as a good friend? Having those conversations is game changing. Yeah. Ideally, we wouldn't just be handing over iPhones to 13-year-olds because there's so much risk there. But if your child already has an iPhone, talking to them about, what apps are you using? Do you ever feel worried or anxious about anything that happens online? Or a local high school here had a terrible problem of, all of these Instagram pages that get created and then teachers find out about them, they take them down, but they're set up by kids and they're intended really to bully and harass other kids. So they would take pictures of girls' feet in the bathroom and then they would post all kinds of, lies and terrible things about them. That sounds silly to us as adults, but what that means to a preteen or a teen is huge. I mean, it's huge, and they feel so much shame around that. And truly, that's kind of the point we want to get to, is trying to help them figure out how not to feel shame around their experiences, but here are tools and resources that can help you actually feel empowered. Yeah. And when you start that conversation with your child and they feel a sense of empowerment because of their relationship with you, it's really amazing to see how they then take that forward into their friend group, and they start to have those conversations and kind of help start to monitor unhealthy relationships in their own friend groups, and they start to kind of give them advice. And I think it's important.
You said something earlier that that really resonated with me and I found a lot of value in when you were talking about trusted adults aside from your parents. And I've been pretty open about this on the podcast. My parents worked a lot when I was a kiddo. If I had had a cell phone in my hand, there would be some serious gaps in the monitoring of what went on. And I'm a naturally curious person. It's something that I like about myself. However, at that age, there could have been some things I stumbled into even unintentionally. But what I did have, and my parents were great about, and I kind of sought out as an individual as well, is a lot of trusted mentors that were adults. And I had a lot of adults that were curious about and asking me questions and very thoughtful about what was going on in my world, how I was feeling, how I was thinking. And I think that element of community for our kids is so valuable and important, because oftentimes, like, the things I would tell my trusted adults in my life were not things I was comfortable telling my mom or my dad.
Yeah.
Because I would feel a different level of shame maybe that I was letting them down. And so those adults that were in my life, though, I think played a really important role in shaping who I am. And I think that is something maybe we don't talk about enough, that there's always going to be gaps. Whether it's working or parents are absent for whatever reason, or single parents, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's going to be some level of gap.
Thank you so much for saying and sharing that, because that really is the bottom line for me, is this does not fall on the shoulders of any one of us individually, but really us as a community. And community can exist in so many different places. I practiced jujitsu for a period of time, and I had this conversation with the individual who owns the jujitsu gym, because I mean, I would be there and I would just be seeing how these adults are like, they're taking the time to, you know, go to other events for these kids who are, you know, they're enrolled there, but they're going to their tennis matches and their baseball games and they're having pool parties with them. And what that does for a young person is so transformative. And that's why I always say I don't have biological children, but that doesn't matter, because it just takes one person, one adult, sparking some bit of hope in a child or seeing something in a young person and speaking to that, and it can completely transform the trajectory of what's possible for that person.
Yeah.
In my life, that was my grandparents. My grandparents raised me, and, you know, it could almost make me cry just thinking about what would my life be like had I not had them always in my corner, despite, you know, the poor choices I may have made, and knowing that they always believed the best in me. Changed everything in my life in terms of what I believed was possible. Every child deserves that. Every child deserves to have a champion, someone who's in their corner. Yes, parents do have responsibilities, and these conversations can be hard to initiate or have. I encourage you to, you know, fight through the discomfort and have them anyways, but also encourage your young people, you know, think of adults that you can go to and talk to. And it doesn't have to be me. You want to plant that seed with them, because inevitably hard things are going to happen. Hard experiences are going to arise. Pressures will show up in a young person's life. And they just need to have thought about that beforehand, so that they kind of have, you know, a plan of action for who I can go and talk this through with, that is an adult who maybe has some wisdom that I don't have, who can help me think this through without judgment. Again, that's the biggest part of it, is without judgment. We as adults have a tendency to superimpose our opinions and beliefs and experiences and thoughts onto them, and that is the literal opposite of what they need in that moment. They just need someone to sit with them and allow them to share their experience without judgment or opinions. You know, that's so powerful. And that's really what I loved so much about being a forensic interviewer, is in order for those investigative interviews to be legally defensible, I had to be a neutral third party. And it was such an honor to serve in that capacity for so many years, because you know, I was really kind of the canvas that just allowed a child to tell his or her story. And, you know, I'm not a counselor. I don't pretend to be. There's no way I could do that. But there's something so powerful just in allowing your story to be told and not being judged for whatever you might have lived through. There's so much healing power in that.
Yeah. I think so often too, parents, you know, I think that almost all parents start with wonderful, great intentions. And I think oftentimes they don't mean to come across judgmental, but I think it comes from a place of fear.
100%.
And I think, you know, even for us, like we've got, my husband and I have 3 young kids, and our thing is from the get-go, we've wanted to normalize all conversations. No conversations off the table. No topic is off the table. We call body parts by their actual name. No code names, guys. Use the real thing. We tell our kids, there is nothing that you could not tell me. Like we try, and then my thing is, I don't want to just say that, but I want that to be a felt thing in the house, that anything could happen and they can come tell mom and dad, and we're a safe space for that.
That's beautiful. And I say that too to my sweet young niece that I'm raising. Saying it and practicing it are 2 different things. And I have to admit I'm guilty of saying it, and you know, her bringing information to me and me having a big reaction. And that's why I've told her, you know, please think of some other adults. I mean, I just have this awareness about myself that I can't handle some certain aspects of her life. Like I truly don't want to like be her confidant about boys, but she needs to have an adult who she can have those conversations with. But, you know, she and I both know that person is not going to be me. So who are some other adults in your life that you can kind of navigate that with? So we've identified her grandmother, and she has a really great, she's my cousin, and she's really wonderful, and she has those conversations with her. I just have the awareness to know I will have a reaction, and I don't want to superimpose again kind of my reaction, you know, onto her, so that she starts filtering herself and she can't ask hard questions when she needs to. So
I just think that's fabulous. I think having the self-awareness and the humility to say, I am your parent and I am not well able to tackle this. So let's identify together a safe adult you can go to. I think that's just so, what an amazing tool that is. And from a young age, trying to show them how to extend grace, you know, and asking when we mess up, going and apologizing to them and saying, Mama messed up, I'm so sorry. But extending grace for, you know, like I'm thinking of just a very minor thing. When my son was in kindergarten, he got into the car one day. He said, Mama, I heard a word today that I don't know what it means. I said, okay, what is it? And it caught me off guard because it wasn't a word I would think a kindergartner would have walked away from school learning. And he saw my face and really he kind of, you know, I was like, but it took me a second, like, okay, gather yourself. Like, don't make a big deal. Like, okay, well, so yes, that's not a good word. We don't want to use that word, and here's why. And we were able to talk it out. But he could see on my face at first, like, oh, that's a big one.
And you know what happens in that moment is well, let's just think for a minute. I know we're adults. I mean, but we can all think back to when we were children. Mm-hmm. I can right now think of at least 3 different experiences where I was in that situation as a child.
Yeah.
And as I'm remembering that, you have a physical reaction.
You do.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you internalize that experience. So this is kind of where that really fabulous but difficult book comes into play about the body keeps the score.
Yeah.
You internalize this experience, and if you can't process it in a healthy way by, you know, understanding kind of what's happening, if you can't process that through, it does get stuck. Or maybe it becomes kind of the script of, you know, some value you're assigning to your own personal meaning, right? Yeah. It's really important to be able to have those conversations, but our reactions in terms of like just, our facial expressions or if we vocalize it, we're projecting that onto then the young person in front of us, and they're internalizing that as an experience, and it's informing so much for them in an instant that it's all happening subconsciously, but it's informing how they're going to approach you next time with information, right? So it's kind of heavy. It's a lot to take on, but there's since we were talking about books earlier, there's a really great book I would recommend every adult read. And I read this before even my niece came to live with me. I just thought this was the best book that's ever been written. It's called Conscious Parenting by Dr. Shefali Sabari. That book has so many precious gems of advice and wisdom. It's because it's just about, recognizing that children are people and they are individuals and they have their own internal world, and every encounter they're having with us, we're modeling for them, what will become their adult lives. I usually tell people, like, go to dinner tonight or whenever this weekend, sit down at a restaurant and just observe around you, look around you at the number of families who are sitting at a table, should be in community or fellowship with one another, but who have devices in front of their faces. Yeah. So rather than talking to one another, they're using their devices to disengage. Yeah. I understand life is hard, and we all want to just check out for a minute and not use brain power, but we're modeling this behavior to our children, and we're teaching them that this is okay. It's okay for us not to talk to one another and look each other in the eyes and really care about the experiences that we're having in the world.
Well, I was thinking about that in context with your niece. It makes a lot of sense to me that you wouldn't want to be the person that she comes to about boys, because you've seen so many difficult situations that I would imagine you care so deeply for her that fear and concern is going to be ever present in those conversations, even if it's something that she might feel really joyful about and is new and she's exploring and just being a teenager, and it could all be innocent. But it's going to be hard for you to see it that way.
I've apologized profusely. I cannot unsee or unknow all of the many stories that have been, shared with me over the years. And I love her so deeply. And so while, it was such a beautiful experience for me to sit with, thousands of youth and hear their story and not have a reaction, I wish I could give that gift to her, but I know about myself that, I love her too much that I'm going to react. So,
but you have gone steps above what, my parents' generation, sex was such a, you learned about sex at school, you learned about sex in a book. If you had a conversation, it was I could talk to my mom about it, but good God, my poor dad, it would just make his brain fry to think about talking about sex with his baby girl. And I think, though, going the step further of acknowledging I'm not the person to have this conversation with, but let's identify together who a safe adult is for you to have that. You giving her the resource and not leaving her high and dry. Because you're not saying, baby, I can't handle that. Just no. Well, then she's left going, okay, well, then who do I talk to?
The stranger on the internet?
Yeah. You're going that big step of, which is a massive thing, saying, again, together, let's identify a safe adult, not a 15-year-old that you like talking to, but a safe adult that you can have these conversations with. You're giving her the resources she needs to where she's empowered to go and have the conversations that she needs to have, but with someone who's safe.
And trust me, you want to be involved in that conversation.
Yes.
Because predators and people with bad intentions exist literally everywhere in the world. And I don't say that to scare anybody, but again, predators, they go to the safe places and they will cloak themselves kind of like sheep in places you wouldn't expect them to be, because they have the easiest access to youth maybe, or I mean, they literally are everywhere. And so you want to be involved in that conversation so that you also feel comfortable and that you trust the person who's advising them, the adult who's advising them. You trust their decision making, and you know that they are indeed a safe adult.
Do you follow up with that adult? Like, if you know that your niece has gone and talked with your cousin, do you follow up to kind of gauge, like?
No, but we've definitely had preliminary conversations, and I've explained to them, I trust you, and I've encouraged my young person to come to you with, things that maybe they can't talk to me about. If there's something that, in your mind necessitates needing to let me know, then please call and we'll talk it through. But I don't want to know.
You don't want to know the details.
I don't want to know everything.
Unless that's why you have this set up.
Right.
Right. So can I ask this question? Because I'm like you. I don't have any biological children, but have a lot of friends with kids, and I have shared with them, I'm happy to be that person for you. What would you say for someone like me that is like, okay, I'm thinking of it they're not minors anymore, but 2 young women in my life that I probably owe a phone call to say, you do know you can call me, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to turn around and call your mom, but you do know you can talk to me. Like, I need to have that conversation with them. But how would you suggest, what is a good tool? Because I tend to be like, I want to give you all the advice of all the things that happened to me, and I know that's not correct. I need to be more curious. But what advice would you give someone who's wanting to be that trusted adult?
That's so beautiful. And if more of us, if more of you existed like that in this world,
I'm
not trying to put myself on a pedestal. I just care.
I say that just to say, the old adage, it takes a village to raise a child.
It does.
It is so true. And we've become so siloed, and again, the devices have distracted us so much from the value of relationships that it's scary in a way to me. So it truly does take a village to raise a child. And I would say, going one step further, let's go have ice cream, or let's go to dinner, or you want to go see a movie, just spend time with them and allow that to become a part of the natural conversation. Like, what's going on with you? There are so many adults, and I'm so thankful for that in my niece's life, who really care about her. She's found so many great adult relationships in her tennis community, and again within our family and church, and there's so many people who care about her and who they're always talking to her just about, what do you want to do? Like, can what do you want to be when you grow up? She's started a mentor relationship with her tennis coach because she thinks she wants to coach. And I just think that is so valuable, because if we aren't the role models for our kids, and we're not modeling the way for them, they're going to go find that somewhere else. And we want to be that. So identifying who those people are, being those people, if you can be, it's invaluable. And it really takes all of us banding together as a village to, raise a community of strong and thriving young people, not just girls, but boys too. I mean, I actually feel, my heart really breaks for the males in our community, because I just think it's even more challenging for them, because there's so much expectation around, masculinity, and there are so many pressures that exist for young males, and these are conversations that are also essential to have with them.
Yeah.
If we could all just take a pause in life and reflect on, we were all kids once, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we've been through hard things. And we don't, even now, as adults, have all the answers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, why can't we bond with our youth over that same shared experience?
Yeah.
They're not going to believe us. They don't.
That we don't have all the answers, and that they're not one day going to have them too.
They just don't believe that we were ever young once, right?
That's true too.
Before I was a photographer, I was a teacher, and it was always funny to run across a kid like at Walmart. They would be like, wait, you go to Walmart?
You're in the wild.
You're out in the wild. This is weird.
You're a real person.
You're a real person. I think what is potentially a beautiful opportunity to grab hold of here, because we live in a world where parenting has become very isolated, and very much like we've got to take it all on. I love the opportunity to extend permission for parents to realize you actually don't have to have all the answers. If you can just, number one, realize, be self-aware to realize where your weak spots are, and then hopefully you've already been investing in communities around you that have those safe adults. You can relinquish a little bit of that, and that's hard. That is so hard.
Is it? I don't have children, so I don't know, but the relationships I've had with my nieces and nephews has been so beautiful and has gifted me so much.
Yeah.
I think, and I now feel like her mom, so I kind of, there's a tendency to feel some sort of like ownership of her.
Yes. Yeah.
But children have their own unique spiritual calling on their life. They have their own unique soul, right? And so I can understand now, like just this kind of sense of like, you're mine, and I don't want you to be with everybody else because I need to take care of you. I need to protect you and shelter you.
And it comes from a great place. It comes from wanting to do the absolute best for them, but sometimes doing what's best for them is realizing that you're not the best for them in one area or a couple of areas.
Well, just that they can really, benefit by being in other relationships too. I mean, it will make them more well-rounded as individuals. And two, again, being a parent is hard, and that's a huge weight to carry that you have to know and do it all. So allowing yourself that grace as a parent to like, I don't have to know and do it all because I have a village around me who also cares deeply about my children, and they want to be involved in their lives.
Yeah.
And allowing that to happen, I mean, allowing that to be.
Yeah.
As a child that experienced that, I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for it. I've had this conversation with my parents as an adult now, like recently within the last year, because I've done a lot of reflecting on it. And I've told them this, you being gone and not present for all of the things that you missed is just the reality. I was never, I noticed it, but I didn't feel like abandoned by it because there were so many wonderful adults in my life that were present, that were encouraging, that did believe in me, that were able to say good job or keep going or whatever. And then when I would go home, that was reiterated by my parents, but it does make me feel like a more well-rounded person because I did have just a variety of people in my life that gave me different perspectives, different spiritual perspectives, different educational background perspectives, came from different parts of the country or the world. And like taking pieces of all of that has allowed me to be curious about not being just Mary and Richard's daughter, but being who I am and following that path.
And what a blessing, right? I mean,
it is.
I feel the same way just in terms of my growing up.
Yeah.
But I think about what if those people weren't there?
Yes, I do too. And that's why I feel like I'm saying is there are kids whose parents aren't there. We do need to lean in as a community and be present. Whether the parents are amazing parents or maybe there's just a situation where they're not present. Maybe there's been someone that's passed or whatever, really terrible situations. Right. But I think as a community, we have to step up and lean in and love our youth. And
I think too, because something you've mentioned that I think really deserves highlighting is the respect as human beings that we need to extend to these kids. So often we think, oh, you're a kid. This child, their world is their world. And, it's amazing to me, like I think back to my fifth graders that I taught and how in hindsight I see there's little difference really now between who they are as young adults and who they were then. There's been maturity and there's been life experience, but they were that adult in that little body. They were just, you know what I mean? And extending that respect, like, even like when my kids were toddlers, like it's challenging not to be like, talk down to them in baby talk, but realizing, getting on eye level, and when they're throwing a fit and they're all upset and like, hey, did it upset you that juice spilled? That's a bummer, huh? Starting as soon as you can, talking to them as if they are the adult you're envisioning down the road. That's them. They're just in this little smaller body, and extending that respect to them will make them hopefully feel heard and make them feel safe to come and
empowered to be themselves.
It's a cultural habit to think, oh, they're just a kid. That kid has more going on.
I have learned more from children in terms of wisdom, because they don't have all this other stuff that, blocks that out, and they don't filter it through all of experiences like we as adults tend to do. So children are so wise, and they are trailing the breath of God. If we will allow it, children can be our greatest teacher. I don't pretend to believe that we know more than they do. I mean, we've lived on this earth and we've had more experiences, but they are so wise. They are so wise.
They are.
And they can teach us so much if we'll allow it. If we'll allow ourselves to learn and be open-minded and curious.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that this organization exists in our community. We have people like you and volunteers that are present for our kids, especially the ones that are the most vulnerable and aren't able necessarily, probably when they first come to you, to speak up for themselves. But from what I've gathered from my experience talking to you about the organization, you do empower them.
This organization is really special, and every nonprofit really is. There are so many exceptional nonprofits that are here and doing great work. But I love so much what we do because, one, this is a super shameful experience and a hard thing to unwind and to, figure out. But it's exactly what we do. And we do it with so much heart and passion. We want to help navigate the hard things, but we don't only want to be there for the hard things. We want to walk with you through the fire and help you find a path forward and create new experiences that you're going to remember, that are going to pour into you and make you feel just a little bit stronger. Maybe you're going to hopefully learn some things about yourself, and you're going to realize that, in fact, yes, you've been through hard things, but the things that you feel are your weaknesses, they will in fact become your greatest strengths if you allow yourself to process the lesson.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So how could someone who's listening, other than starting, I think probably like you said earlier, starting in your own home and starting in your own village, being the best you can to build that environment for the kids in your village, how might someone who's listening contribute to this?
Yes, that's a great question. I love what you said. If it's not our nonprofit, go find another nonprofit to support, or find young people in your own life that you can, mentor and walk alongside. We, though, would love to have you because we do so many really great things within the walls of For the Silent. We provide life skills groups. And so some of the volunteers who lead those groups, they have expertise in, different facets of life, and they'll come and teach a workshop. We've done yoga with our girls. We've made laundry detergent with our girls. We have one of our Women of Hope, in fact, she's in banking and she teaches a financial literacy class. So just so many things. I had someone recently approach me, and it really kind of broke my heart because she's the most beautiful human being, and you can just tell that she's so special in terms of what she carries inside of her. And she came up to me and she said, I want to help and make a difference, but I'm only, and she named her occupation, I'm only a blank. And I said, that does not define you, but we all are called to a vocation because of what God's given us in terms of our skills and abilities and our passions and interests. But you never know the difference you're making on someone's life by being your authentic self and caring, right? Yeah. And I told her, you are where you're supposed to be, and don't discount the effect and impact you're having on the lives of others because of where you are. I mean, that is exactly where you need to be. But also, I mean, the skills that she has to have doing that as a profession, come and share that with our girls because, you know, they need to know that information too. I mean, we teach a lot in schools, you know, too much things I feel like that we don't necessarily get to apply in life, but we don't teach kids how to apply for a mortgage or build credit or
how to build a budget
or how to have a conversation.
I
mean, really, just how to look somebody in the eye and talk to them and have a true conversation with someone, because most of those conversations are happening on their devices. They're probably pretty awkward when they're seated across from someone, and what's familiar is to reach for the device. So like something as simple as that,
it is so true,
is not taught. So they can use their skills, they can volunteer, but like some people have been blessed financially and they are like, Becky, I maybe am giving my time and talents elsewhere with my vocation, but I want to financially support this group and the work that you do and the work that your volunteers are doing to reach kids. How would they contribute?
So as a nonprofit, absolutely. I just said yesterday to someone who came and did a tour in our office, he said, thank you for what you do. I said, thank you for allowing me to do what I do, because without the generous financial support of our community, we would not be able to exist and provide free services that are so vital and that really are affecting change within our community, but with our young people. Our community sees value in that, and I'm so thankful that they do, because we're a nonprofit. We are dependent on generous financial support from community members. One of the really unique and special things about For the Silent is we are 85% funded strictly through individual and local business support. That's really phenomenal. We don't have any large state and federal grant contracts. Not to say that we won't. And we have in the past, but there's so much, you know, like red tape that comes with those large kind of state and federal dollars, that I think that it takes something away from being able to respond individually to, you know, the unique needs of each young person that you're working with. So it's amazing to me that there are so many people who, and they don't ask for anything in return. They're monthly donors. And I just got through writing thank you notes before I came here to people all over, you know, like Hawkins and Longview. And I don't know if I'll ever get the opportunity to see them in person, but they believe in what we're doing, and they believe in giving back to our young people so that they can move forward and thrive and do great things in the world. And if that doesn't give you hope, I don't know what will, because it to me, it just fills my heart.
Is it forthesilent.org?
Yes.
And then I could put my link there if you guys wanted to contribute to my campaign. But if you don't want to contribute specifically to my campaign as a woman of hope, then you could just contribute directly to the organization, because someone may come back to listen to this after Hope Gala, right? So we're currently in a fundraising campaign through November 4th is the date of the gala. But if someone's listening later than that and you're like, wow, this is really compelling, this is something I want to be a part of, forthesilent.org?
Yes, ma'am. I'm really excited for Hope Gala. I was really excited at the kickoff event, and I've said it repeatedly. I don't know if I've ever been in a room full of 30 powerhouse, such special women. I don't know if I've ever, and so the energy that's associated with that is pretty awesome. So I can't really imagine what Hope Gala is going to be like. Our capacity is 500. We sell out every year, around 350 attendees. So we're growing the event this year.
That's great.
We're bringing in an exceptional keynote speaker. We have great entertainment. We're going to have a silent and live auction. And then there's some, I can't give everything away, but there's going to be some really cool kind of surprises built into the evening as well. And so, if that kickoff party was that, like,
it was special,
just magnetic and like life-giving. I can't wait to see what Hope Gala is going to be like. So there's dinner, drinks, again, entertainment. We're bringing in it's going to be educational. Our keynote speaker is Becca Stevens. She's been in this community before, and she's an exceptional human being, and you're going to be so inspired by her story and the work that she's done with survivors of sex trafficking and how she's given them opportunity to move forward, start fresh, and build a life that maybe they weren't given the opportunity to build. So it's definitely something that you don't want to miss. It's going to be an awesome evening.
That's awesome.
I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm so thankful that you generously gave your time to visit with us today. We feel really blessed to be in this community because Ashley and I both separately and then together just have met some really extraordinary women that are doing great work. And you are certainly included in, I don't know why I'm getting emotional. You're certainly included in that group. And I'm just grateful that you came in and shared your heart today.
You both have given me a gift by allowing me to be here today, because you each are, you're such an inspiration to me. And I, in turn, am so grateful that there are women like you in this community and who care enough to have this conversation. I know that it's hard. It's hard to do. And it just speaks to who you are and your courage and your willingness to go the extra mile because you believe in what's possible for young people. So thank you. Thank you both.
The Celebrating Women podcast wants to hear from you. Email us a voice message to celebratingwomenpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear your story or the story of an incredible woman you know. Become part of the conversation on social media. Facebook.com/Celebrating Women Podcast. On Instagram, search Celebrating Women Podcast. The Celebrating Women podcast has been presented by Hand and Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler, Texas. Book your appointment today. Stop by the spa in Cumberland Shopping Center or online at handandstonetyler.com. The Celebrating Women podcast is created and hosted by Mandee Montana and Ashley Fisher. Support the show for as little as $3 per month at celebratingwomenpodcast.buzzsprout.com or visit our show notes. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to the Celebrating Women podcast.